Okay, welcome everyone to the National Telegraph's coverage of Election 44, hashtag Race to the Bottom, where we have 5, 6, 7. Everyone is trying to lose. Who's going to lose the best? Who's going to lose the worst? Who do we hate the most? Spoiler alert, everyone. We will be keeping an eye on all these insane numbers. We will be here until we say, screw it, let's go home, because the mail-in balloting is not going to take, is going to take 2 weeks anyway. And we don't want to get zucked or kicked off of everything because we said the word mail-in balloting. Probably because I said the word mail-in balloting. There's no longer a National Telegraph. We've been nuked from orbit. So we are here to be the most pessimistic and realistic commentators on this. So we will be giving you all the boring CBC, CTV analysis of you need X amount of percent here and there. But we're also going to look at individual races across the country. The hardcore, like Majid Johari, clearly a spy for the Islamic Republic of Iran. We're not pulling any punches. We're just going to say it. We'll keep an eye on his race. Omar Al-Ghabra, Minister of Muslim Brotherhood Affairs, probably going to win, probably going to get back in. We'll keep an eye on that. The close calls one, the interesting Toronto Centre there. We'll look at Maxime Bernier and Beauce. Any riding we find personally interesting, we will explain why it's interesting, and then we will cheer against because listen, there's no one. Is there anyone there that like we're cheering for?
I don't think like we're cheering for people in an ironic sense, mostly outside of maybe like a few people who are like decent people who are running. Like we're probably cheering for Anime Paul, ironically. Like I don't like the Green Party, but I think she's a much better person than like a liberal. Or like we're like cheering for for Jenica Atwin to lose, but we don't care who does it.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, Anime Paul getting in would actually moderate the Greens a little bit nationally. It would cease to be Elizabeth May's party, and maybe it would be her party. It'd be hilarious if Aaron O'Toole doesn't get his seat. That'd be really funny. If there is a God, he will make sure Justin Trudeau doesn't get his seat. All that. Listen. All right, spoiler alert, I've looked into the future. I already knows what happens in this election. It's the worst case scenario, okay?
The good thing for all of us is that I feel like if we all are hoping for something realistic and you don't like any of the parties, just hope that there's a big stalemate and nothing happens. Just like all the parties are so divided that they'll have to argue with each other. Even though they all agree, they'll be forced to pretend like they don't support each other's legislation, and at least things will get delayed in Parliament. And so far, that's actually looks like what's going to happen. If you look at the maritime numbers, the Liberals are dropping seats to the Conservatives and potentially the NDP for no reason. They're not really getting anywhere in Quebec. It's just more so just like business as usual minus a couple Liberal seats.
Yeah, so I mean, the Liberals are generally underperforming their land. I mean, remember 2015 when Trudeau won, because it was 2015, they swept Atlantic Canada, didn't they? There was a clean sweep, the Atlantic sweep. Now, it's also...
By the time we moved on to Eastern Canada and away from the Maritimes, they had taken every single seat. They were 24 seats ahead. It's essentially it's like 32 seats. It's their Alberta out there where the Liberals should expect to win everything if they're playing their cards right. And because they haven't been, they're just losing an extra 4 seats to the Conservatives than they did last time, even though, like, if you looked at any of the polling, they were not supposed to drop any of this stuff. Like, they're a coast of bays in Newfoundland and Labrador. Somehow the Conservatives are ahead of, even though most pollsters gave the Conservatives like a 5% shot of winning it.
Yeah, I mean, every seat the Liberals don't win in Atlantic Canada is huge for everyone else. It's the same thing. Like if the Conservatives drop a seat in Alberta, that's the equivalent of like losing a clutch game to the Orioles or whatever. Or if the Packers blow it against the Lions tonight. By the way, I have not looked at those scores. Any score updates for the Monday Night Football will result from you being banned from the world. Now it's more likely to come up in spoilers because I said that, but whatever. It's worst case scenario is Liberal all what's the worst case scenario? Liberal majority and someone spoils the Packers game for me near the end of it. I think that's the worst case scenario for tonight. For every Canadian involved who's probably thinking of both those two things with equal fears.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a terrible election. This makes you wish that we had different elections in Canada, because it's like you woke up in a different country and it happens to be election day and you're just like looking like, oh, look, red's a little bit ahead and blue looks like they're coming up. Like, you could care less, but we're just hoping that whatever happens isn't like especially important. I hope nothing important.
Well, I'm going to say here's some pretty hard-hitting commentary. This is the one true thing about this election is this man does need more beer. That is true. If you're going to be monitoring this Canadian election, none of you are near drunk enough for
Yeah.
what's about to go down. I haven't even had one drink. You got to be up tomorrow morning. But
Daniel's being depressed, stone sober.
yeah, I mean, maybe I'll start an opium den here in my apartment. Maybe that will cheer everyone up. Come on, come all. I made a deal with the Chinese government, so I'll be selling your kids fentanyl. Come on in. Let's get through this election together. I mean, we're at the point now where like these ridings are in a couple of hundreds, so nothing really interesting is happening yet. I mean, polls just closed in Vancouver.
We've been coming out with some pretty wacky polls where, like, for some reason in Gatineau, the Greens were ahead just because they like. It's always the funny thing is that the first polls that close tend to be the weird ones where it's like in the middle of nowhere and there's like 20 people who vote.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like there's the initial numbers are so like sometimes you can see if it's like a strong liberal riding and they're getting off these big like margins, okay, then you can call those or strong conservative riding, whatever. Then okay, then those mean something. But those aren't the ones that we really care about anyway. Like it's all about the swing ridings. Again, we'll be looking at the 905. Can Aaron O'Toole is his brand of conservatism? Is it going to appeal to the 905 voters? Is it going to win over the soccer moms? We will have to do that whole dance. Now, this is my favorite thing about Aaron O'Toole. Is you know what? I've said a lot of things about Aaron O'Toole, but as I always say, I have never accused him of being an unskilled politician in terms of his answers and his rhetoric. When given softball questions, he can bat over 500 in softball questions. But it's so clear that he's trying to win. Again, he got in shape, he ran around, he got jacked, he got less fat, so he'd be more likely to be prime minister. Good for him. Yet his friggin' strategy the entire time was. Did you notice this? That every time he would be somewhere, he would like bring the magazine with his face on it that he was so proud of. He's like, we have a plan. And then he'd show you the magazine with him on it. We have a plan. And just showing you the thing. And it's like,
I saw that one time with him holding it, but I thought that was like right when it was released. They were taking photos in the studio. Like, if not, that's really weird.
No, I
it's
would
like
see him
the
do that
one.
every day.
It's like if you were once on the front page of your local town's newspaper, and for the rest of your life, you just go around carrying it around because you saved a dog.
Yeah, but it's like it's not like the local newspaper cover. It was his own magazine. It's like if the National Telegraph had a magazine and I made the cover and I'm like, look at me. It's like, yeah, okay, that's
That's why it was a bad idea to put him on the front, because I find it's like trying to be too personal. Like, I'm trying to be too relatable, guys. I'm your cool friend Aaron O'Toole, and it's like, and then on top of that, holding it, it's like a little bit weird. It's like your friend who has a homemade newspaper and he's like bragging about the fact that he makes the cover.
Yeah, and like good for Aaron O'Toole. You look at Aaron O'Toole 2019 versus 2021. He's in much better shape. He's looking a lot better. He's leaner, meaner, way further to the left. Great, good for him. Okay, good for him. Everyone, best way to fight coronavirus: do some sit-ups, like Aaron O'Toole did. But for someone who was so determined to win, like. They had this extra blackface picture of Justin Trudeau. They waited for the last day to put it out, so it'd have no effect. Like 2 weeks ago was the time to release that, so that it enters the national conversation again, and then takes the Liberals off their game, and then takes it because ultimately a picture of Justin Trudeau in blackface isn't going to sway this election. We already had a blackface election. Captain Blackface already got in there, and like. This doesn't do anything at the last moment. It's not like, oh my God, the shock. I'm not voting for someone in blackface, right? All the Liberal voters are like, yeah, blackface is fine because the Conservatives are racist, right?
They literally should have, they should have released it sooner. Although I find it funny that they must have found the photo sometime in 2019 or after the election, and then someone just put it in a filing cabinet and they just waited, and then they just sort of pulled it out right before this election took place. But like, yeah, you should have honestly put it on like billboards, put it in a commercial about Justin Trudeau, like remind people of this sort of like. Because the thing is, a lot of Eastern Canadian voters, maybe you can correct me, they tend to buy into the Liberals' narratives that they protected people during COVID more than like people out West. So it's like you got to take their minds off it with other sort of Trudeau scandals. You can't just sort of focus on COVID policy because if you're the Conservatives, you literally agree with Justin Trudeau. So what's the point?
So, I mean, there was some anti-Trudeau stuff. I mean, when we were falling behind Americans in vaccinations, there was I mean, Trudeau's numbers were very, very down. It's when we started to catch up, like once all the first countries that had, vaccine development, and then like all the other first world countries started to catch up. Then his numbers started to come back in again. Now they did do the fear mongering with the COVID stuff, but there's nothing really to fear monger about, because like Aaron O'Toole was hiding in his house as well. Like Aaron O'Toole was doing these weird, in studio town hall, things that look like bad. So
it was just immediately artificial the entire time. I think the Conservative campaign was done well, and I would never say that Aaron O'Toole isn't polished, but when you have too much polish, it starts looking like an insurance company commercial or insurance company ad. And it's like, I look at it, I visually know, like, that's a well-made ad with a lot of money in it, but I'm not going to get passionate about your campaign because of it.
Like, there was less horrible technical mistakes than Andrew Scheer made. Like the one of the things that just blew my mind with Andrew Scheer is he ran an entire commercial without looking directly at people. Again, it would be like me doing this show like this. It would drive everyone crazy, even though that way has me turn to you. But if I was like this, it would just drive everyone crazy. Eyes are off center. It's like, those are the mistakes Aaron O'Toole doesn't make, where he'll look in the eye. But his problem is, it's the Hillary problem. It's over polish. People are now smart enough and have had enough experience with politicians that they can understand and they can sense when someone is giving you a very monotonous, well-polished, focus groupy, say random stuff take. So it wasn't so much that it wasn't there, this narrative in Eastern Canada. I mean, maybe other people can prove me wrong here, but the narrative in Ontario going around wasn't like, oh, Justin Trudeau protected us from COVID and the Conservatives will, start giving us freedoms and that will be dangerous. No, like every party is pretty much lockstep on more lockdowns. They're all pretty much on that. This election has kind of fought over nothing. It was just like, do you like Justin Trudeau? The Conservatives weren't bold enough to put out an actual plan. Like, they had a plan, but Aaron O'Toole's plan, we broke it down. It's incredibly skilled at saying nothing. It says nothing, and it takes all these different. It takes a position in everything, right? It's pro-Israel and pro-Palestine, right? We're gonna fight Hamas and fund Hamas, we're gonna fight COVID, and it's all the same stuff. It says nothing. So there was nothing. They didn't run on wedge issues. The PPC ran on wedge issues. But the PPC's problem, as we're probably going to see, is the PPC doesn't have a organized ground game, and they have to rely on social media, Twitter, and ground rallies. And we'll see the strength of that tonight. Hopefully they do better than they did 2 years ago. But we'll see.
Yeah. The thing is that this was completely Justin Trudeau's race to win, in the sense that if Aaron O'Toole, if Justin Trudeau gets a minority government, there's no going to be, you can't celebrate as the Conservatives, because it's just that Justin Trudeau failed to win. There's nothing really that see, you saw the comment too. There's nothing that the Conservatives did that actually stopped Trudeau. Like, the Liberals have been fumbling so much this campaign, but the media hasn't really been covering it on television or anywhere that's going to get a lot of eyes. It's going to get a lot of eyes on it. Like, there's 2 candidates in the GTA area who dropped out from the Liberals because they were sexually assaulting people. Another guy who rolled his eyes at the 2 Michaels. You have Miriam Monsef saying the Taliban are our brothers. You have that house flipping guy out in Vancouver. It's insane.
Hence the phrase Talibros.
Yeah, they've tied, Trudeau masterfully tied their shoelaces together right before the race started, and then he just forgot that he did it. It's so terrible. It's been so bad. They're dropping safe seats. Kitchener now might go to the Greens because of all this fumbling.
Yeah, it's truly the race to the bottom, and Aaron O'Toole has no will to actually forcefully capitalize on any of this and go hard at Aaron O'Toole on the sexual assaulting stuff is pretty clean. All right, As I've said before, Aaron O'Toole isn't perfectly clean when it comes to a lot of things that we don't like. But in terms of the stuff that the mainstream media cares about, what is traditionally scandalous, Aaron O'Toole's pretty clean in terms of mainstream media scandals. So he could have gone in and, again, attack them on the blackface, attack them on the fact that all their they can't stand up to sexual assault, and don't worry so much about the truth. Like if they already don't, like the Spadina Fort York guy, say sexual abuser. Just what they're running more and more. Just call him a sexual abuser. Whatever. Like this guy, what's he going to do? Sue you or not? Like again, take it on as the Conservative Party. Fight to win. And if you have to, fight off of
the Liberals are still writing that guy in New Brunswick who said that Native girls are only thin when they're on pills or something like that. Like, how do these people? One, how are these people how have they not resigned? We all know why they haven't, because the mainstream media puts like 5 seconds of pressure on them. But it's like, how do you not beat this person like on the ground when they're saying this like stuff that's this disgusting that they themselves would advocate for someone to resign over if it wasn't them? It's so silly that like you can't capitalize on these people. At the very least, again, like Aaron O'Toole's not capitalizing anything the Liberals are doing, but the Liberals are making so many mistakes. The volume's so high that they're just guaranteed to lose seats that they weren't even that they were guaranteed. I just want to quickly go to the map just so we can actually start seeing some of these ridings. But I was just looking at Majid Johari's riding. It's it's a little bit early on, not that many polling places counted yet, but that's one we want to keep an eye on just because, Iranian asset and whatnot.
Yeah. Majid Johari is a Iranian. I mean, he is a plant to the IRGC. I'll look up the article I wrote on Majid Johari. We can put it in the comments section. You can keep going.
Yeah, so far Maxime Bernier is in fourth in Beauce. Again, not a lot of polling places counted yet. And people always have a perception that like the way that the race starts is how it's going to go. It's like oftentimes polling stations are very bipolar. You'll have some polling stations in ridings where even though the Liberals only won like 15% of the vote, they get like 75% of the votes just because it's a Liberal, like it's a little small Liberal sort of granola town. But that will be a race to look at with Maxime Bernier. And then another one we want to keep an eye on that's sort of well on its way is, it actually changed since I last looked at it. It is Jenica Atwin in Fredericton, who left the Green Party because she hated that her leader was a Jew and went out to join the Liberals and is currently being beaten by the Conservative in the area.
Yeah, so that's a nice one. Yeah, we want Jenica Atwin to lose. I mean, the Liberals have a few pretty hardcore anti-Semites on there. And the Conservative Party started to add in a few. The Harper days of being pro-Jew are gone, but they're less. I mean, I'm not going to rag on I'm not going to accuse the Conservatives of being more anti-Semitic than the Liberals. It's very hard to do. And to be fair, the Liberals are less anti-Semitic than the NDP. And to be fair, the NDP, yes, they're rabidly anti-Semitic, but they're still less anti-Semitic than half of the Green Party, which is fighting their leader for being a Jew. So, all in all, not Canadian political parties not big fans of the Jews. But again, they're happy to accuse people of anti-Semitism, just as long as they promulgate it as well.
This isn't a specific riding that we're looking at because there's anyone interesting in it, but this is just to show that the race seems very like all over the place and who might win. It's going to be really like, I feel like this race is going to be so riding by riding that nothing interesting was happening nationally. So it's not going to be like, the Conservatives really came out this election or the Liberals really came out. You'd have to go riding by riding and say the Conservatives really came out here, and then like 2 blocks away, that's where the Greens came out, and here's over where the NDP came out. But I'm just highlighting Coast of Bays in Newfoundland and Labrador because so many polling aggregators gave the Conservatives like either 0 or 5% chance of winning this riding. Yet they're actually quite a bit ahead with only a couple of polling places left to count. So there might be a couple surprises, even though we didn't really care in the first place.
Yeah, we got a decent. What's happening in Westmount? So someone wants to know what's happening in Westmount. We can pull up the Westmount stuff.
Is that Ontario, I assume?
I think Westmount's in Quebec. I know Westmount. I know this. I had friends who went to Westmount High around Montreal, but
I'm trying to find this. I'm so unfamiliar with Eastern Canadian places ridings. Ugh.
You Western superioritists, you Westonator. We should separate.
I updated the global news tracker and it's like different looking now, and I'm scared.
All right.
You can't do this to me. I own this place.
So I'll tell you guys. Westmount's Montreal. I think that might be Trudeau's riding. Like Trudeau's going to win Trudeau's riding.
Oh well, that's Papineau.
He's Papineau. Mike Baker wants to know PPC leading anywhere. No, currently Maxime Bernier is in 4th place in his riding, but very early polling.
They haven't even started counting Papineau yet.
If Papineau, Justin Trudeau, he win Papineau and take attack on a bone. So, I mean, the reason why we're not going to go all the way into the night, I remember I was on a stream for the Conservative Party leadership race, and that one, like, we did 4.5 hours, and it's just like, that's too much. We're not going to, like, the American election was, had, it went on for an extra week because, it wasn't called for, because of the mail-in votings and all that. Now, this is another thing that, like, no one could talk about it, but, like, the 35-day election, I don't know how Justin Trudeau has the ability to call a 35-day election. A point that should have been made is we need a longer election cycle with mail-in balloting being so heavily relied on, because this will be so out of the normal because of the pandemic. You're going to have a lot of people who are going to want to mail in their votes. That is something that we would need to sort of have extra time to count in. Like, the Conservative Party should have been hammering them on this, but Aaron O'Toole was so afraid because it was a trap being set, because if he said anything critical of mail-in balloting and the use or even anything practical, the media would immediately start saying Trump, Canada's Trump. He's Canada's Trump. Now, if Aaron O'Toole was called Canada's Trump and then didn't back down and said, you're being ridiculous, this is a very reasonable point, I'm not giving in on this, like, we're allowed to talk about mail-in balloting, sorry, then his numbers would have gone way up, because there were just so many instances where I was just waiting for Aaron O'Toole to prove me wrong, and then I have his numbers skyrocket, therefore proving me right. Proving me wrong in the sense that I know he didn't have the backbone to, be the true blue conservative he marketed himself as a year and a half ago. But there were so many times where Aaron O'Toole, if he took a stand on anything, if he legitimately fought on a wedge issue, if he had distinguished himself clearly from Justin Trudeau on something, he would have done great. And then all he needed to do to get at his get out of trouble card was, just calling him Captain Blackface and saying, this guy sexually assaults women, this guy wears blackface, this guy, why are we listening to him? So yeah, he's trying to fearmonger about me being Trump. I've never sexually assaulted a woman. He has. Like, there was so many easy outs on this. And it's the thing we talked about before. Like, yeah, the national media was going to give 5 minutes of coverage to all liberal corruption, right? A liberal, rapes a woman out somewhere. They get 5 minutes of news coverage. Well, Aaron O'Toole, it's your job to make sure that's on the news. It was the Conservative Party's job to sort of make the stories, and they refused to do it. They wanted to play this middle ground campaign. And one of the things before we went on, I was watching CTV News. Aaron O'Toole's father fully said Aaron O'Toole's father thinks that even if they lose, there should be no leadership review. Fair enough. I'm not going to fault Aaron O'Toole's father on that. I'm not a sociopath going to attack someone's family like that. What the problem is Aaron O'Toole's father is out there saying, yeah, he was trying to take the party towards the center. So yeah, we had full acknowledgement from his father that no, this wasn't true blue conservative. This isn't like, and Aaron O'Toole did the whole, big tent, like that was his politician way of saying going to the left, so he can never admit he's lying. But the fact that his father said, no, he was bringing the party further to the left. He was trying to take the party to the left. That's the truth, because Aaron O'Toole would have talked to his father at some point in the last 2 years, and his father probably knows his son decently well enough to know that, yeah, okay, he's a bit of a lefty on these things. And that was rather fascinating to have the father outright say it in such blunt terms.
Just let you know, Michelle Krager said that CTV already called the election for the Liberals. I guarantee, like they're probably just going to call it for like a liberal minority at the moment. Even then, I think that's a bit of an early call just because of how few polling stations are open at the moment or like have reported in. But when people were asking about Westmount, they meant Notre Dame something Westmount is because that's where Viva Free was running. I just forgot. But that's still nothing's reporting there yet. I just wanted to bring up the Quebec map at the moment and sort of just note the amount of seats the Bloc have. Right now they're at 26, and then there's a lot of hard-fought elections here between them and the Conservatives, them and the Liberals.
The projected seat changes from CTV is the Conservatives lose 6, Liberals gain 5, NDP gain 1. That's in there calling it. Now again, it's not over. Fox News, infamously.
It was Arizona that they called extremely early. But I was going to say, so far the Bloc are actually holding quite well. And if they flip a couple more seats, it's like the Liberals might have at most pulled out like 1 to 3 seats from Quebec. That's still not enough for them to go anywhere. That only offsets some of their losses they're taking in the Maritimes. You move over onto Ontario, and then that's where a lot of the decisions are sort of going to get made this election. But because the Liberals fell on their face so bad in BC, they're like, it just depends on, do they lose more seats in their minority or do they gain more? There's no Cinderella story here, and nor do I want anyone to have one.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, okay, so if we look at this, okay, so now all the networks are sort of piling on. So we're projecting a Liberal win now. Did they just project? CTV declares Omar Al-Ghabra, Minister of Muslim Brotherhood Infiltration, has won his seat. I'd like to thank our Talibros and everyone who helped bring up. Remember Omar Al-Ghabra in 2006 or 7, when there were debates about Sharia courts in Ontario, whether or not to essentially bring in Sharia law to Ontario. Omar Al-Ghabra, after the vote was lost, so no Sharia law in Ontario, and he was very mad because the majority of Muslims in Ontario voted against Sharia law and Sharia courts. And he was very mad. He did an interview with his Arabic newspaper, excoriating the Muslim community for not wanting Sharia law. So this is Omar Al-Ghabra, and Canadian, the organization he used to be head of, he was pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah before going into Parliament. So this is, oh, damn it, Melissa Lantsman. So, I mean, they kick in the nuts. Like, again, this is worst case scenario. So the Liberals going to win. We get, Deep State McGee, Melissa Lantsman in there. Lockdown Lantsman. Good job, Walmart. Lots of lobbying will be done. So lobbyists are happy in Thornhill. So if you want to lobby, you got a tried and true lobbyist coming through Thornhill there. Congratulations to Melissa Lantsman. Melissa Lantsman also once kicked me out of a Zoom meeting from the Jewish community because I asked Aaron O'Toole a question about why he was meeting with openly anti-Semitic groups. And she was like, no, we're not talking about actual anti-Semitism here. Get out, Mr. Bordman. So I was booted by her. Majid Johari is doing well. So
still early on, though.
Yeah, looks like the Islamic Republic of Iran will continue to have their pawn. Like, this is what frustrates me so with the Conservative Party. And Costas, what's his face? I'm sure
Magnakis.
I'm sure if you talk to him, he's a nice guy and he's smart. And he'd be like, hey, all this stuff on Majid Johari. So you could go up and be like, here's a file on Majid Johari. Okay, this guy had no money. And then he went back to Iran and then worked at the Iranian bank. Okay, and no one works at the National Iranian Bank without the run. And that's where he made all this money. And then he comes back and does this. And he had private meetings with Iranian MPs when they were under sanction. And he got named by a former, IRGC defector as one of their foreign assets. What the hell is with this guy? And then they'll be like, Daniel, Wyatt, I know, I agree. This is all really bad, but you have to understand in politics, we got a big party approach. There's a much bigger picture. Just call him a freaking terrorist. I'm sorry. Just call him a spy. Like, no, you carry water and lobby for terrorists. Screw you, Majid Johari.
Well, the Americans will accuse each other of worse over far less information, whereas Canadians, it has to be that he has like a tape of him holding up a sign with today's date, admitting to all of his crimes, where it's like, oh, it's just allegations out there. It doesn't matter that an Iranian defector, like an Iranian spy that defected, said that he's an asset, then was shortly thereafter murdered by the Iranian government. Clearly, that's just a bit of a fluke. He said the wrong thing. He didn't have his coffee that morning. It's all good. We don't have to check into it. And the funny thing is, it's not like the news will cover people making false allegations against Majid, and then they clear his name. So they say, oh, this is crap, and we have an expert in. No, they just quash the story. They don't touch it. And it should be an interesting story that a bunch of conservative nutcases are saying that Majid Johari is an Iranian asset. That would make a good story. They just can't cover it because it's true.
Yeah, I mean, and like, fight on your own 2 feet, but they know Aaron O'Toole will kick him out of the party. If he, the NCCM will, and friggin' NIAC is the American. What's our NIAC? We have the ICC. Iranian Canadian Congress will scream Islamophobia. Like, just fight these people. Fight these stupid idiots, and like you could win. Like the problem is, conservatives in this country, you need to create your own media coverage, and to an extent, this is what the PPC is good at, and Maxime Bernier tries it. Now they're trying the hardest they can to ignore Maxime Bernier, but Maxime Bernier, PPC, at times forces the issue and gets into the national conversation. Right? They force the issue, and that's how they've been able to grow their party. The Conservative Party is terrified of their own shadow. And you're seeing, like, this is the result of an Aaron O'Toole campaign. It was uninspiring. It was dead from the start because he ran as the true blue conservative. He put his ideology as, I'm true blue, Aaron O'Toole. I'm going to, be the strong conservative option. You don't want this party moving to left. You choose me. I'm military guy. I'm true. I'm blue. And Peter MacKay was like openly like, yeah, I'm a red Tory, whatever. And that's why MacKay was better. So O'Toole was the absolute worst option for them to have. MacKay would have been better because you don't get into this sort of dishonesty problem, right? Because MacKay would be running on the same platform that Aaron O'Toole is now. But Aaron O'Toole has to deal with the fact that he spurned a lot of the conservative base. Like, if, I think a lot of people don't like to be lied to. And I think a lot of people would be less likely to jump conservative ship if they got Peter MacKay, because Peter MacKay marketed himself as, Peter MacKay, Michael Chong, whatever. Whereas O'Toole, was more on the, like, I'm just like Pierre Poilievre and I'm the true blue fighter. But then, he switches to Peter MacKay. So you have this problem where you've lied to your base. But then you have to go as an open liar with your, they'll play the Take Canada Back stuff, which is fine, a fine slogan. I don't mind it. They went into the grab bag of just random generic conservative slogans. They're like, oh, what do we got now? It's like a fortune cookie. They cracked open. Secure the future. Okay. Secure everything. Secure mental health. Secure this. Secure that. Secure everything. So that was his plan, to secure everything. So that was his slogan. You go in there and you have this problem where you have to say to your base, okay, guys, when I'm pretending to take us to the left, I'm just lying to the media to be elected. When you elect me, I'm actually going to be that guy from before. But then you have to turn to the people in the center saying, don't worry, I'm lying to my base. My base is a bunch of stupid idiots. I'm just lying to them. I'm really with you, and vote for me. We're going to go to the left. Right?
I always find that argument, though, that the media makes, like, oh, does Aaron O'Toole, does Andrew Scheer have a hidden agenda? Or people saying, don't worry, it doesn't matter that Aaron O'Toole's betraying you all over the place. He's actually secretly in your favor. No politician's ever going to just covertly have a position that's a complete 180 from what they publicly say. Because if anyone found out, you would be toast. You would be absolutely done. So whatever a politician says they're going to do, that's generally probably what they're going to do, unless they just decide not to do it. Unless they just break a promise and don't fulfill something, they never just go 180 in the other direction very often. Like, you're never going to run for gun control and then suddenly be wanting to make it easier to buy a firearm. That's never going to happen.
Yeah, just coming in, they've called the race for Guy Francois Blanchette, so that the Frenchy McFrench pants will retain his seat. And sometimes, I'm kind of happy because of all the leaders, Guy Francois Blanchette, yes, he's ridiculous, but he had some good moments in the debate when he just admitted, I'm not trying to be Prime Minister of Canada. I thought that was pretty funny. There's another one. Oh yeah, when they're talking about Indigenous issues, and then he's like, the nation of Quebec, and turned the bad drinking water, the dead, the unmarked graves. He turned it into a Quebec thing. I thought that was so funny.
That's exactly like when I buy poutine and it says poutine in English above the French. It's so sad. But he actually won that debate looking back on it. Just because, he was there, he just represented Quebec. He was a complete hardliner. And then after the fact, the media, bending over backwards to somehow justify the Bloc and Francois Legault saying it was somehow, insensitive the way they talked about Bill 21.
Yeah, that's the thing. Guy Francois Blanchette shows that this worked. Right? The entire reason why Quebec separatism and the Bloc Québécois is even a thing is because what we are saying right now actually works. Being a bit truculent in politics will work. You could just blow through this. Yes, people will push back, but you saw this. The Bloc won that debate because the next few days, all the party leaders were talking about how bad the debate commission was because they said they called Bill 21 discriminatory because they're all forced to pander for votes in Quebec because Quebec will love them or hate them. They are highly truculent on their particular issues, and they won't listen to reason. They won't take no for an answer. And they'll scream if, again, Quebec, it's weird. Quebecers are totally fine when Trudeau gets up there and says Canada's systemically racist. Every Canadian is racist. That's why I was in blackface, systemic racism. But then you say this one law in Quebec is discriminatory, which Bill 21 is clearly religious discrimination. If I was running, I would run opposed to it, even though it's Quebec, you might lose seats there. But no, someone's got to have principles. You can't ban someone from a public service job for wearing a hijab or a turban or a kippah. No, you just can't do that.
Well, if you were in the debates, everyone would start off the debate saying Daniel's somehow they'd probably say you're somehow anti-Semitic. But anyways, they'd say Daniel's Islamophobic, and you're like, I'm the only one up here who will say that Bill 21's awful and that you've brought that Blanchet is basically a racist. He's justifying racism.
I don't think it's a racist. People,
bigotry.
Right, there's discrimination here. It's not racism because Islam isn't a race, Judaism isn't. Okay, but it's Islam, Judaism, Sikhs. It's religious thing. It's religious discrimination.
I was thinking in terms of how you would throw their narratives back at them because they'd say racist, but you'd say you are just standing up for a discriminatory law, and despite the fact that you guys are all attacking me, I'm the only one who's standing up for Muslims here.
Oh yeah, you could definitely play that. Oh, I would love to watch the NCCM have to do a report on me. They'd be like, Daniel is crazy Islamic. I'm but they have this one issue. They're so big on Bill 21, and they fail every party. They'd have to pass me on that. But I would love to see what the NCCM would say about my position on Bill 21. Maybe they would. You know what? I'm calling it now. Okay, so Bernier is getting
still early on. It's a bit the problem with these bigger ridings, because his riding is a little bit suburban and a little bit rural, is that you count specific towns, and often when you see maps, you'll find what I was saying a while back. Even if you only win 10% of the vote, you'll have towns where you somehow win over 50%, but it's just because that's what your base is. So it's probably that they're counting Richard's areas first, or that a lot of his polling stations or the polling stations that have closed are in areas that really like him. Because I was looking at some of the internal polling from the NDP before election day, and Maxime Bernier was actually surging in about maybe 5 or 6 points out. And if you're surging upwards and you're 5 or 6 points out, you actually might be far closer than that, because it takes a few days for polling to reflect reality.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so I'm just going through Twitter. Again, so this is ridiculous. So you see from people in Conservative Party saying we're going to this thing. I'll read Damien Cox, who's a sports Toronto lefty. Woke up a bit on Doug Ford's lockdowns. Another Liberal government after Sheeran and O'Toole. When will the Conservatives offer a country an electable leader who won't play footsie with the far right, anti-vaxxers, gun lobby, and climate change deniers? So it shows that even when you do the O'Toole thing and go to the center, all the media has to do is call you alt-right once with no proof. And then you're like this to the Liberal voters. There is no...
Aaron O'Toole really got attacked by, rightfully so, attacked by PPC voters and sort of more traditional Conservative voters when he started going after people for protesting Trudeau. And it's okay, there's a couple bad apples in the crowd, but then he immediately went on the train of, they're racist, they're the worst people ever. Some idiot threw a handful of gravel, which means everyone there was a Nazi. You're that guy's the one who was cozying up to the alt-right. It's just frustrating to read this crap.
I'll bring up this. Is it going to be a Liberal majority? God help us. So right now, I think we're looking at a Liberal minority, is what they're calling. And again, we're not calling anything. We don't have the internal polling. We're just telling you what the polling station, what the networks are calling there. And we're going to be we're going to focus in on some of the bad actors and see if we at least get some bad people out of politics tonight. Can there be minor victories?
So here's a minor victory right here, is that we have Mike Morris leading currently in Kitchener, which was people weren't really paying attention to that as a national issue. But ever since Raj Sani couldn't stop sexually assaulting people, the Liberal polling numbers in that area just absolutely tanked, to the point where the third place Greens started surging. I think they were actually in fourth place, and they started surging, and now they actually might win by the looks of it.
Perfect. All right, you kids out there, don't sexually assault people. Advice from the National Telegraph. National Telegraph recommends you never sexually assault anyone, and then run for office, or just don't do anything. That's the thing now. So it looks like we're going to get a liberal minority, which, a liberal minority actually might be the best case scenario in terms of long-term political strategy. And I've outlined this because with the liberals minority is, I guess they're going to try and do all the things they tried to do again, but the Senate punting Bill C-10 and all the stuff they've tried to do over the last year, they actually have to restart the clock on a lot of their bills. So will they want to fight the sort of free speech, internet censorship battles all over again? They probably will, because I did say one of Trudeau's biggest pushes right now is to censor the internet and shut it all down and make sure that everyone's hate speaking. So yeah, that's going through. And you know what? Oh, to be fair to Aaron O'Toole, actually no, because Aaron O'Toole is pretty fond of suing people for nonsense. But to be fair to Aaron O'Toole, he wouldn't be passing C-10. Like Bill C-10, Bill C-36, Aaron O'Toole couldn't craft that and put them into law. Now, will there be something light? Like, would we get Bill C-10 light under Aaron O'Toole? That's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Aaron O'Toole's advisors and the polling says, we really need to ditch our conservative values because we've made them so unpopular by always just thinking they're really unpopular, even though when people get polled on these specific issues, they're actually, the majority of people actually hold conservative values when it's phrased to them in a clearly legible way. But I would not put it out of the realm of possibility for the people close to Aaron O'Toole to start whispering in his ear and do a lot of what the Liberals want to do in sort of a watered down version. And I could see them having two options. One, the actual lefties in the party actually trying to undermine the Conservative Party, pushing it. And then two, this sort of big brain take from the actual Conservatives who still keep their head in the stands, who I sometimes talk to, and their reasoning, because I know them, this is bad reasoning, but this is Conservative Party leadership, is if we put in watered down versions of all these terrible laws, well, then the Liberals won't need to, when we lose, the Liberals won't want to put in their version of law because it will already be on the books. So we'll just have half a crap sandwich instead of a Liberals whole crap sandwich when we put it on. That would be the big brain take from the Conservative Party insiders, not knowing that the Liberals will just steamroll it and do whatever they want to do. And that's
it's
anyway.
The thing is, like, I don't want to be rude to anyone or try to crush anyone's dreams. It's like the PPC probably is not going to win a seat tonight. If they do, it's going to be Maxime Bernier's riding. But it's the same logic the Conservatives are using that the PPC is using, that it's like, let's care about issues that are talked about on the media. Let's try and get on Twitter. Let's try and get trending there. Let's try and get a lot of pats on the back on social media. It's like, really what you need is a tough ground game. And that's never going to come from just having a very sort of limp-wristed sort of, well, let's just sort of talk about the issues that make people happy. It's like on the ground, campaigns that win get kind of dirty for a good reason. It's because people need to know what the negatives are of other people. But sorry, I just want to quickly go back to the map with Kevin Vuong. This is the guy who stepped down, or the Liberals cut ties with. There wasn't enough time to remove him from the ballot, but he's the Liberal who in the military, I believe, had a bunch of sexual assault charges that were suddenly dropped. But it was clear, I think, the way it was done. It's like, okay, he did something. They just let him off for some reason. He's still leading the NDP by guarantee. The NDP is probably going to win. They probably just counted a lot of early ballots when a lot of this stuff hadn't come out. And the NDPers will probably take the riding just because they're very dedicatedly sending in mail-in ballots. Liberals don't actually send in about half as many mail-in ballots, or like, they basically send in quite a bit less than the NDP, and then the Conservatives send in quite a bit less than the Liberals. The more left-wing you are, the more likely you are to mail in a ballot, basically.
Yeah, especially after the last Trump election. So this is bad news for the Conservatives and the PPC. Is like, you know what? Will there be some shenanigans on the mail-in ballots? Maybe, but there also is the truth that we have to understand that with what happened, especially in the last American election being so fortified, a lot. The amount, how many PPC supporters trust mail-in ballots? Now, good on that. Like, if you're a PPC supporter and you went to the early polls or you voted today instead of a mail-in ballot, like, yeah, it's one vote. It's all the same thing. Good for you. But the problem is the PPC is not going to have sort of a second wind on the mail-in ballots, and probably the Conservatives won't as well. So the second wins probably are looking better for the left-wing parties. And, will they be rigged? Will they be shenanigans? You've already heard things on social media from this and that. No one knows. But, it is a statistical probability that the left-wing parties will dominate mail-in ballots, even if there is no shenanigans. The mail-in ballots will go towards the left.
Yeah, the only thing I always comfort myself with for Canadian elections in terms of corruption is that we all know that the parties internally are so corrupt that on a federal level they would probably catch each other. There's not that many tricks that other parties probably wouldn't know about by now.
Oh yeah, I mean mail-in ballots to a leadership race. So the Conservative Party leadership thing with mail-in ballots, clear shenanigans went on there. Like the story with the vote printing jamming didn't make sense. We know people who've run those type of machines before. That's not how they work. The story they gave was bunk. The delays were bunk. The internal parties rig elections all the time. Okay, it's one of the things about Canada. It's one of our dirty secrets. Canadians are very passive, but internal election rigging and money laundering, huge in Canada. It's snow washing. A lot of you probably heard that term. This is the type of thing that goes. But in terms of federal, when the parties get at it, because all the parties want power, it's hard to rig this particular election because there's so many corrupt parties all watching each other who know all the tricks, right? So, do you ever see the Simpsons episode?
We still hand count stuff for a reason, where I doubt all the parties, even though it would be considered like a very American thing to push back against voting machines, all the parties would flip out and justify how this is somehow not like the US, because they would understand how it's much easier to manipulate votes if there's machines around. So I think Canada's going to have hand counted ballots for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Oh, wow. This is a tweet from Jim Calaharos I just saw. Lisa Raitt giving credit to Justin Trudeau on CBC, referring to the CPC in third person. It's going to be a disappointing night for the Conservative Party, like she had nothing to do with this disaster tonight. Now, that's very funny. Okay, so Lisa Raitt set the course for this disaster tonight by fixing the CPC leadership race, but robbing members of the chance to choose between 5 candidates, all in favor of Erin O'Toole, who continues to prove he just can't win an election without disqualifying his opponents. Jim Calaharos and Erin O'Toole do not get along. It's one of the reasons I like Jim Calaharos is the same people hate us both. But that's the next one. And then Lisa Raitt got screwed over because she objected to David Parker coming into Toronto. So all the deep state, like Lisa Raitt was the deep state of the Conservative Party. And like, again, I say deep state a bit more tongue in cheek, but Lisa Raitt was your most deep state person who had shaken hands with all the special interest groups. But then she went against some O'Toole operatives, and then she got booted. So she's spurned. And the fact that Lisa Raitt is, again, maybe it's human psychology, like she's distanced herself from the party. It's no longer we. Like Lisa Raitt's out. She was pretty in. And Lisa Raitt isn't true. Like Lisa Raitt is pretty left wing. Lisa Raitt was one of the first Conservative MPs to start meeting with Muslim Brotherhood front groups. Like she is not true blue. And the fact that she's distancing herself from this disaster is very fascinating. It's like, I'm not sure if you take 100 level psychology, you probably learn that when your team wins, like, okay, if the Blue Jays win tonight, people are like more like to say we won tonight, whereas the Jays lost last night. Like we win, they lose, is one of the things with generally. So that's one of the truisms of Canadian politics. Of psychology. So maybe it's just a loser thing. So she's taking, but like the fact that like you have very senior people jumping ship, and it's not like it's the Pierre Poilievre people who are like this, we've lost our values people. It's the people with no values, jumping ship. This is an unmitigated disaster for Erin O'Toole. Now, if only I knew someone who predicted this exact situation in February of 2020 and tried to stop it, and then got slapped with a bunch of lawfare. Oh no, who if there was one political commentator, if you guys know a political commentator out there who tried to warn you of all of this happening in February of 2012, like and subscribe to the channel and his videos, because that'd be really nice. For him or her or Z. We don't know what pronouns they use. Probably they, them pronouns. Yeah. Okay. Wyatt, take over.
I was just gonna say that this is why it's so frustrating. Canadian politics is so frustrating. It's like, I'm not like getting all like falling apart or anything here, but it's just, you just watch this and it's so disconcerting. You just see so much, like, you push so much information out there about corruption, about people's like radical positions, and just constantly like, no, it's all good, everything's fine, we're better than the US. It doesn't matter that we barely talk about issues. It doesn't matter that we never sort things out or we never crack down on corruption. Somehow we're the best. We don't have to worry. Aaron O'Toole, I want him to win. He's a brilliant. I talked to some kid the other day, in a university student, and he said, I really like the party under Aaron O'Toole. And it's like, oh my goodness, it made my like skin crawl. It's like if you went to the United States and someone's like, I'm feeling really energized for the future since Kamala Harris became the vice president. It's like, oh my goodness, did like a OxyClean, not OxyClean, but like did like a Crest commercial become a person? Oh, this is like horrific to watch. But again, like, you call out all this corruption and people just sort of stick their head in the sand and they just do not want to hear. Like, they'll probably not even watch this, so it doesn't matter. But all the gun lobbies, when Aaron O'Toole stabbing gun owners in the back, as a pressure group, your duty is to go after Aaron O'Toole for betraying people and saying, we will take back all of our support and laugh while you lose unless you do exactly what we want. That's what pressure groups do. That's how prohibition in the US, which nobody wanted, got passed. Because 10% of people would say, we'll vote for you if you put forward our prohibition policy. If not, we'll let you lose. And they somehow got it through. But all these gun lobbies were just like sitting around justifying Aaron O'Toole's positions. Like, no, you're not. He's not actually betraying you. He's just doing some sort of underwater 4D chess. It was so horrific to watch because you know that they're just lying.
And one of the things that
all the corruption, they're like, I don't care because Trudeau's worse. And I'm like, no, he's not. If you're willing to put up with this amount of corruption, he can get worse if he wants.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what the Conservative Party doesn't realize, and they don't realize this because they don't think. They outsource their thinking to focus groups and polls, and you and I have talked about them and whatever. And I'm gonna make this point for the 75th time in the last year. But one of the biggest mistakes Andrew Scheer made last election is he ran away from Doug Ford, and Doug Ford was then in alliance with Justin Trudeau this election, which was bizarre. But Andrew Scheer you wouldn't go within 10 feet of Doug Ford because Doug Ford was unpopular with the left because, the Rob Ford hysteria, they were calling him Donald Trump. He had said one conservative thing once, so there's this big hoopla. And when Andrew Scheer distanced himself from Doug Ford, it created this mentality. And again, humans are animals. We're all animals, and we intuit things. When you start to shy away from your values because you think that other people might think they're unpopular, people will then think, oh, there's something that they're afraid of, and then something bad is in there, right? It's one of the reasons why some people are just really bad with kids and some people are really good with kids. I'm pretty good with kids because I don't panic.
I'm horrific.
Wyatt, you're horrific with kids, but you guys spend an afternoon with Wyatt, and I'm not leaving him with a toddler. But Wyatt has other problems with on this too. But a lot of people they get nervous. They think, oh, how should I? Whatever, right? Same thing with dogs, right? You're nervous around the dogs. Again, I'm pretty happy around dogs, so they're happy around me. Whatever. This is the exact same thing with your political philosophy. If you are happy and comfortable being conservative, even what the CPC would call far right, even if you were the true blue conservative, if the Aaron O'Toole that he was pretending to be in March and April of 2020, if he had stayed on that and said, this is the winning platform, we're going to win as conservatives. We're going to win as conservatives. We're going to show our values. Our values are better, blackface, and then stood on them proudly and laughed away any sort of criticism and said, no, I believe in freedom. But when he's like, oh, okay, gun, suburban moms might be mad at it because the gun lobby. Oh, and America, you just get up and say, listen, we already had bans on weapons. all these things are legal. The Liberal Party, they banned, you know what Aaron O'Toole should have done? And I was thinking this on the gun thing. This was his gun policy. He should have said, we're going to modify the bill C, whatever the gun ban one. And he should have left in all the ridiculous bans. So at points they had banned like websites and a picture of a gun and different paintballs and all that. I would have taken all the real guns off of it and said, no, we're going to leave in some of them. And like AR15.com, yeah, that's still banned. And then put in the law, like this would be so hilarious if you had left in the bans on like the websites and then, put in a law, if you're found in possession of AR15.com in your household, find like the most anachronistic, outdated, feasible punishment in Canadian law. Like find somewhere like in a town in Manitoba where you can be dragged behind a horse on a Saturday. And then say, if you're found with an AR15.com in your house, which you can't be because it's a website, right? You'll be dragged behind a horse in Manitoba on a Saturday. Like say that. Say, no, we're keeping some of it. And then expose them for being ridiculous and then turn the conversation to that, right? And then focus on how ridiculous it was. Be the funny guy and then say, listen, guys, we don't need this. And then when pivot to, I did that to show they are not serious, right? That's not a serious thing. We have bans, but real problem is gang violence. Real problem is drug running, gun smuggling. It's organized crime, and they're not serious on organized crime. We then pivot off of that. Be the funny one.
Well,
make a point.
People don't understand too that sometimes when you're under the most fire, like it's sort of the truism that when you're taking the most flack, you're usually over the target. Yeah. When in it was like the Tea Party movement in 2010, before the election, where like the midterm election, the Republicans picked up like 63 seats, or there was like a net game of 63 seats for the Republicans, which is like one of the biggest seat pickups in the House ever. And that was when the media was relentlessly like trying to attack the Republicans, attacking Andrew Breitbart for exposing like corruption in the Democratic Party and certain things through like Acorn and whatnot. That was like the media probably thought that they were winning that election just from how hard that they were hitting the Republicans. But the Republicans ended up getting so many seats out of it because they played they took a risk. They played hard. They went after the Democrats, and you only win stuff if you actually, play the game. Whereas the Conservatives in Canada feel like they can sit at home and just keep status quo and hope that Justin Trudeau makes enough mistakes that he's going to lose. And it's like Justin Trudeau is guaranteed to make like 70 mistakes every day, but like still, you're not going to get rewarded with votes by just doing nothing.
And then exactly, and like even when Justin Trudeau makes mistakes, like someone has to capitalize on that. Okay. If the Conservative Party makes mistakes, the Liberal Party doesn't need to do anything. The media runs with it. The NDP run with it. The Greens run with it. Everyone runs with it. And then you get a comment. When the Liberals make a mistake, the media gives it 5 minutes of airtime. It's totally on you. It's on Aaron O'Toole's shoulders to articulate what the mistake is to Canadians, explain why it's bad, explain why he'd be better, and keep it in the news. It's solely on the Conservative Party. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. Okay? Should the media be getting these subsidies? No. I'm with you guys on all what you think, but that's the reality of it. It is on the leader of the Conservative Party to make sure that they can capitalize on mistakes. And you're right; they just wanted to stay home. Aaron O'Toole had his thing where because I know he was trying. He got in shape for this. He got in shape. He made the magazine cover. He was really happy with his magazine. Look, we have a plan. He brought his toy everywhere. It's like how my nephew, who's 2.5 years old, loves bringing his little elephant toy. He sleeps with the elephant toy. Aaron O'Toole's elephant toy was his magazine. That was his little binky. Like, I have a plan. Good job, Aaron. Like, you got a plan. That's nice. So that was, that was the Conservatives. They wouldn't capitalize on the mistakes. Again, this blackface photo they released, too little, too late. Like, if you're going to release it, do it 2 weeks ago. Throw the Liberals off the game. Remind everyone, put it in their minds of whether at least get it in there before the advance polls. Like,
think about all the scandals you currently know about that would implicate the Liberals. I know you probably have double it for the Conservatives just based on where you put your time, but it's like if you wanted to release a parade of scandals for the Liberals that the media had not covered yet, it would be like this would be too short an election to roll each of them out.
I will say, like, there are way more liberal scandals. Just like I get in trouble with the Conservative Party because it's like the liberals will have a scandal, I'll talk about it, and be like, okay, and the Conservatives are also doing this. Like half the time, the Conservatives are also doing it. So actually, I have double the liberal scandals.
That's what I mean, though. Like, of course, the liberals have we and SNC. I'm talking about ones in the background that the media would never put their finger on. That you just happen to know more of the conservative ones, but it tends to be true about the liberals. Like, let's pretend that they're not true about the conservatives at all. It's like you could endlessly just swing at the liberals over all their crazy crap. Like, just look at like Omar. What was his name?
Omar Al-Ghabra.
Al-Ghabra. You could just. Yeah, look at those three people. You could probably throw like 7-10 stories out of each one of them in terms of the details of going over, like, why did like Majid Jahari meet with this shady real estate developer sending money overseas? Why was he talking to this person from Iran who's not actually allowed to visit Canada's parliament? Why is he over here? Like, there should never be like a moment that Majid Jahari is not being harassed by the media, rightfully so.
Iranian MPs. He accepted the gifts from MPs. There's one. Let's see if we can bring up the Marion Monsef riding. That's a Peterborough in Ontario, Peterborough riding. Let's see if we can bring up our Talabros.
You will be pleased.
Okay, there you go.
That's actually a lot of votes in too. Like that's 115 reporting of 289, and she has like a 1,500 point lead. 1,500 vote lead. That's pretty good.
Okay, so here's some silver lining, people. In a country where you pray, this is still a country where if you openly praise the Taliban, Canadians will think that's too far. So that's good. This is good news. Mariam Monsef, who lied on her was an immigration minister. Then we found out she lied about her immigration papers, and then was fascinated by Sharia law and thinks the Taliban are her brothers. Her Talabros did not get out and support her. Not enough Taliban fighters in Peterborough to push the Liberals to victory there. So Peterborough, good news. You know, you're not going to be joining the Taliban anytime soon, or at least in the next 4 years.
Yeah. And also, just letting everyone know, even though the current totals still don't put the Liberals in the line for a majority, like they're not going to get a majority of this. There's literally 2 seats left. If they get those last 2 seats, I'm not kidding, they will have gotten the exact same amount of seats as they got in 2019. I'm sort of quickly going to verify that. Yeah, like the Liberals won 157 seats last time. Conservatives 121, Bloc 32, NDP 24, Greens 3, and then PPC 0. But it's like, that's like, this could be hilarious where literally we have an election and it's literally just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Just nothing happens. We just sort of like someone like a liberal goes from being in Toronto to being out in like a more rural area. A conservative grabs up a seat in Nova Scotia, but then they lose one in Calgary Center. But the actual totals don't change. And I honestly, that might be the best outcome because I think it would actually hit Canadians like a Mack truck that nothing changed.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll hit John Paul here. Is anyone deeply concerned about this outcome of possible majority? The prediction is a now liberal minority. So the media's now it's being called as a liberal minority. So we've rearranged deck chairs on the Titanic. I guess the other thing is like, what about the mail-in ballots? The mail-in ballots will not be favorable to definitely the PPC. The mail-in ballots will skew more left, we think. But the mail-in ballots had to be in weeks ago. So I don't see the mail-in ballots playing a huge role, but we don't know because we don't have any data on what this is going to be an abnormal year for mail-in ballots. So there is no like previous electoral data to go on this volume of mail-in ballots, plus of what we just had in the States. So it's almost impossible to predict what the mail-in ballots will be doing.
This is going to be an interesting riding because that's where that one liberal that was there, and he got in trouble early on in the election. And this is probably one of the first scandals on the campaign trail because one of the major issues for BC voters is affordable housing. And this guy in the past 5 years had like flipped 21 homes, which for a Vancouver home is like $3 million per home or something like that. So he's contributing to the reason why homes are overpriced because he can flip houses to people leaving Hong Kong or China, and then he can like charge them massive amounts of money from like a small flip job or whatever. It's like, and like that's why he's probably going to lose, even though he was the favorite for Granville. Because ever since, although I find it so dumb, and this is what frustrates me, Jody Wilson-Raybould used to be the MP for this riding. She left. You would assume everyone there is like, we're done with the Liberals. They're corrupt. They took out our own Liberal MP. And everyone's like, as soon as Jody Wilson-Raybould leaves, everyone has like Stockholm syndrome and are like running back to Justin Trudeau until this guy does something like clearly stupid that shouldn't have even been required to have happened for people to have rejected the Liberals. That's what I find. Like, the Canadians, because of our short... This is why people complain about the Americans having such long elections. Having elections all the time at least makes people politically engaged, so you generally know what's happening. Like, Canadians, as a general rule, don't know what's happening. Like, people who go and vote and just watch sports at night. Yeah, and to be fair, it's not fully their fault. It's you have government-run media, which does not go into depth on any political topics. It just sort of talks about Stephen Harper's like racist, Justin Trudeau's the best, and doesn't like what was like Thomas Mulcair make you feel energized for life or something like that. It's like nothing. And that's why I always find people are like, oh, Americans are so obsessed with politics. It's like, not really. If you go to Europe, people are engaged in politics as much. Like in the UK, people know far more about what's going on in their country than Canada does. And again, it's the media's fault. It's the fault of super short elections. It's the fault of Parliament having rules where nobody really goes after each other hard. And it's just the fault of parties for trying to keep everything buttoned down. And unless you know somebody, you're never going to get elected.
Yeah. It's, and like, you don't like the party's control who comes in the door. Like the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, they're not open for you. Like random person, like you got to know people to get in. Like even to get access to the papers to qualify, it's not a very open thing right here.
Bernier did end up losing his riding again. It looks like.
Oh yeah.
And actually by a wider margin. It sort of feels like it's almost like I'm not even sure what to say. In the sense, I know the PPC is scoring much better across the country, but it's sort of funny how in the riding that they that their leader used to hold, they sort of fell in points. Maybe he's going to catch up just when they count more stuff, and it's going to look a little bit closer. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people weren't really.
So right now, PPC is getting about 5% of the vote, which is I think what we said. Like, is they're polling at 10%, but their lack of ground game is gonna hurt them here, and will the PPC go down to 4% in the mail-in ballots? No. So like, is there a win for the PPC? Yeah, you could say there's a win here. They've gained vote share. They've scared the Conservative. Like if the Conservative Party ever wants to win a majority, they're going to have to deal with the PPC in some way. And Aaron O'Toole is not the leader to do that. You can't go with more left-wing politics. Like there's going to need to be a conservative party. So the PPC can win from the sense that they will affect Canadian politics in some way by forcing the Conservatives to be conservative or continue to lose. That's the silver lining here is, will the PPC get federal government grants and will they turn into a ground game? Like, can the PPC take whatever government subsidies they're going to get from tonight and turn that into a legit ground game where they, build up ridings and riding associations and EDAs and go forward. So we'll have to see the PPC, like with more votes from Western Canada starting to come in, their vote percentage might go up because they're like the number 2 party in Alberta. So the PPC might get to 7% by the end of this. Just by Alberta stuff coming in.
And as you noted in an article, all they need is 2% of the vote nationally, and then I believe all they need then is 5% of the vote in each riding in order to be able to get 50% of all their campaign expenses covered, which is why Canada is not usually open to new parties, where it's incredibly hard to start a new party because to get to 2% nationally is quite difficult, because if you don't have 2% nationally, you have to score at least 10% in a local riding in order to get your funds given back to you, which is quite like a hard thing to do. So starting a new party, you're basically just throwing money away and just burning it every single time you get to go into an election until you hit that 2% mark, and then you can build up some momentum. But I find the entire system is, and the media sort of complex is sort of designed not to allow you in.
Well, the National Telegraph is not endorsing the way Canada runs anything in terms of elections. We're just telling you how it is, and the game to play there. So, you know, the PPC, if people are saying, need 4% to qualify the debates. Yeah, okay. So will they qualify the debates next election? Yeah. Will the debates help them? Who knows? I think not being in the debate might have helped them, because they got the boost for sort of you get the establishment. But I do think the PPC will have an effect. Like the Conservatives had to take their heads out of their posteriors at some point and deal with the PPC this election. Then they made the same pitch the Liberals successfully do make to the NDP voters is, hey, if you vote NDP, you're going to get the Conservative Party because you're split in the commie vote. By the way, can we talk about Jagmeet Singh commercials? How many Jagmeet Singh commercials did you watch? Like, because I'd be watching baseball because I love Blue Jays and all that. And you would get the Jagmeet Singh commercials. It's like the Jagmeet Singh, the NDP stuff is so stupid. It's like, do you want better? Vote NDP for better. We're going to make the rich pay their fair share. It's just like they have one thing. It's like rich people and vote for us because we'll do better. It's like, what will you do? Justin Trudeau has words, but he doesn't follow through. It's like, okay, but what are your words? Like, what's your plan? It's like tax Jeff Bezos, go into Amazon, hold up Amazon, take all of their money, and then use that to buy, more transgenders. And then that will save the country. Like that's essentially their plan is rob Jeff Bezos and invest in transgenders. And then, we have billions of dollars. We'll be able to create like at least 4,000 new pronouns. And then that will feed the poor.
Yeah, no, I honestly don't watch that much television. You do because you're a sports guy, but I just didn't see any Jagmeet Singh ads. I saw like basically no ads, and I think that's the entire sort of like the trend of the election is nobody knows what's happening, so people just sort of voted whatever they felt like or whatever they did last time, because that's literally the results we're getting. Maybe it's going to be plus one seat or minus one seat depending on the party, but it's like pretty generic. And what do you think Justin Trudeau is going to do? Because he's won. He has a minority government. What kind of a victory speech does he make? Like, I wanted to give Canadians a choice, and they've chosen nothing. They chose me again at the exact same margin, so I was completely wrong for calling that election. Like, it's going to be, I'm not sure if, like, they're going to spin it, like, the media is going to spin it as, oh, he's making a victory speech, and without leaving out the fact that I'm not sure how this is even a victory speech. He failed to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually, so I know people are upset and watching the Liberals stay in power, but this is kind of actually the best case scenario if you do think, best realistic scenario, okay? As I said from the beginning, all scenarios are bad, right? It's all bad here. There isn't, like, the good guys weren't going to win. You weren't going to see a PPC majority. You weren't going to see any party that's going to want to, push back against the government authoritarian lockdowns. You're going to, like, tomorrow, they're going to be talking about fourth wave and everyone go inside and vaccine passports and blah, 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 blah. Even if O'Toole won a majority, you'd still have massive vaccine passports all over the place. But this is essentially a pretty good result because this actually is going to be a bit of an embarrassment for Justin Trudeau. Having nothing happen, this will be another thing that will hurt him long term. Long term, Canadians will remember, hey, wasted election. This is something that even the pro-liberal pundits can get on. I see you bring up the Jonas Smith in Yukon. He's doing all right. So again, like maybe he would have won had the Conservatives not kicked him out for opposing vaccine passports, because you combine his numbers with the Conservative Party, and there you have 36%. That would be enough to win that riding. That's good. But with Justin Trudeau not gaining any momentum in this election, not gaining anything, essentially wasting this, not getting the majority and keeping the status quo, this will be an embarrassment for him politically, and it will start to ramp up the pressure. There is a non-zero chance that this is the last time Justin Trudeau runs. There's a non-zero chance that we see a John Chrétien stepping aside and Chrystia Freeland coming in. Like this could be, Trudeau might get a few more years of this. Now he is such a narcissist that I don't see him going away on his own volition, but this will damage Justin Trudeau if he doesn't win here. this won't help him.
Like, unless he gains some seats, like if he gained 15, no, actually 15 seats would put him over the top. So honestly, I'm not, it's so sad. It's sad for him that he failed to win this thing, because there was like the stakes for him to win were not that high. You just had to flip 15 seats, which in terms of the entirety of Canada, there's like 15 toss-up races or more in the entire country, and you couldn't secure one of them. Like, that's sort of sad. Like, the only thing is, I don't think that inside the Liberal Party they would push Justin Trudeau out, because the problem is the entire party sort of just becomes face at this point. Like, you think of the Liberal Party and just immediately think of Justin Trudeau's face, whether it has dark makeup on it or not. And the thing with Chrystia Freeland is she's unlikely, in my mind, to push back on him and try to make a power play for the prime ministership. Just because, so many of the people, all the people who've been raised up in the party are yes men and really nothing else.
So, I mean, Chrystia Freeland's popular because she's a woman. Listen, she's a woman and she's not an idiot. Lots of Liberal cabinet ministers are idiot, and Trudeau's tried to push the feminist angle. And, you know, Chrystia Freeland looks like a genius when you put her next to Climate Barbie, Maria Monsef. What was the Melanie Jolie spent $6 million in an ice rink that no one was allowed to skate on. She's that. But Chrystia Freeland is not a Liberal Party insider. Like, Chrystia Freeland, I'm going to use, she wasn't really part of the Liberal deep state. Now, everyone's going to be like, she was the World Economic Forum and she's this and George Soros. Yes. All of that. This isn't an endorsement of Chrystia Freeland. I'm just saying she doesn't have like the big power players inside the Liberal Party that gave us Justin Trudeau. That was, Katie Telford / Rob Silver. They're married, right? Omar Al-Ghabra, Navdeep Bains, and Jerry Butts. Like, those were the behind the scenes. Like, what's his face? The bank guy, Mark Carney. He's more inside, like he has more inside institutional power than Chrystia Freeland. Now, Chrystia Freeland has the public and the media darling, and the fact that she could string a sentence together, said bad things about Trump, costs us billions of dollars, but they turned her into a superhero. So this is where Chrystia Freeland's power comes from. But in terms of like deep state, old liberal boys club power, Chrystia Freeland was not in that. Like, she doesn't really have the means to push Justin Trudeau out. It would have to be someone else. It would have to be, I don't ever see Omar Al-Ghabra getting tired of this idiot. Butts and him are old boys. Like, you would have to see, it would be Mark Carney, and potentially a lot of, will Katie Telford flip on him and Rob Silver flip on him? Those are the more interesting ones to say, will they push out Justin Trudeau? If anyone's going to do it, it's them. Because I don't think Freeland really has the muscle, the internal muscle to push. She has the media name, but I don't think she has much internal muscle. She has some, but
the way I would see Justin Trudeau leaving is if Jerry Butts and Mark Carney could convince him that you can step back for maybe a couple of elections and then come back later when you're a fresh face again. Because right now Justin Trudeau risks, if he calls another election in 2 years, it's like, oh my goodness, this again, and then people just don't vote for him just because they don't want another election in 2 years. They'll basically vote so they can not care for another 4 years who's in power.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Trudeau, this is sort of it's going to be hard to fire this bullet again. These sort of snap election, we need to do this. Like, Justin Trudeau's not going to be able to force another election. This is a one-time bullet. Like, there might be another election if he has a budget that fails. But in terms of, I think he only gets to push this button once, because it's going to be hard to do it again. So if there is some silver lining here on the Liberal minority, it's like nothing changes from what it was 2 months ago. We're in there. Maria Monsef is out, so one bad person got in. I don't really care about the conservative people getting in. How's the Black Lives Matter conservative candidate from Whitby doing? Malik Shahid. She's part of the lefty push. Did she get in Whitby? Like, how did my let's?
I am looking. Not exactly, but that's still only 20 things reporting.
Okay, this is good. That's good then. Okay, so that's not bad. So we didn't get one of was it rigged? PPC didn't get one seat. They're not going to get it. Like, No, like that's not the sign that it was rigged. Again,
This is why I
PPC
don't like the purple wave stuff, because it makes people cynical, because they assume I saw purple wave like 17,000 times on Twitter, ergo the PPC are going to pick up a seat. And it's like, no, not really. All the things that matter in politics are all the really boring stuff. People leafleting 7 years in advance, just putting up things saying, "Hey guys, I'm going to run here in 3 years," and like knocking on doors and hosting barbecues. Just things that don't get televised are usually what matters. It matters for making a party and getting members signed up, all the online stuff. But that's what you're always talking about, infrastructure. At the end of the day, all that stuff needs to be then converted into infrastructure to start generating the tens of thousands of votes in individual ridings.
Yeah. So, I mean, the PPC's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Whereas, they got to be out there and actually got to be out there sort of going on to issues like again, vaccine mandates is an issue a lot of people care about, and they're the only party to run opposed to them. And you're going to need to do that. But when we're talking infrastructure, like what you need to do is you need to get out there canvassing. So the PPC gets people to volunteer, but they volunteer to sort of run. What you need people to volunteer to be there in the trenches every day. And what you need to do is you need to go around to like every house in your riding, to go to every house across Canada. You need to get people to do this. You need to go to each house, knock on their door, find out who lives there. Find out, are they supporting your party? Are they are they potentially going to support your party, or are they absolutely opposed to your party? So 1, 2s, or 3s. Okay. 1, they support you. You know that. You identify them. You ask them to sign up, whatever. You never talk to them again, right? You don't waste your time. They're a PPC supporter. They support the PPC. You give them a robocall on election day to remind them to get out and vote, whatever. You send them emails, fundraising, blah, 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 blah. But you don't need to waste time going back there. You're a PPC person, you knock on someone's door, they have dyed hair, a nose ring through the thing. They think that, climate change is caused by racism. There are 3, they'll never vote for you. Ignore them. You never need to go back there again. You knock on someone's door and they're like kind of receptive and they listen to you and go, okay, people, what's that about? Okay, this. And you're like, I don't really know. And if they say, I don't know, there are 2. And that's the ones you always go back to. You have to find the people who might vote for you and identify them and spend all your time trying to get those swing voters, convincing them. That's where you invest your energy. And that is boring. That's like Maxime Bernier is going across Canada and meeting with the ones, right? The people who are going to vote for him anyway. And you need that. You need to show enthusiasm. You need to build that social media platform. You need to break that sort of, the PPC is just a protest vote. PPC is splitting the vote, blah, 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 all of that stuff. Like, it's good to break that by showing support. You need to show that. But where you need to focus a lot of energy is this is what, when I talk about building infrastructure, this is what I'm talking about. You need the people to be going around to those potential supporters all the time and trying to turn them into ones. That's what you need to do. That is how you win elections.
Like I've seen people when they run for, if people know this person in Calgary, I followed them around, actually did a story on it with them door knocking. If you know Craig Chandler, he's running for Ward 12 or whatever in Calgary. Really good candidate. If you live in that area, vote for him. Probably don't, because it's a specific ward in the city. But like, that guy goes to a door, talks to people a bit, chats, and then every single door he walks away from, because he's an expert at door knocking, he gets their phone number, full name. Of course, he already has their address, and then he gets their email. And the thing is that the infrastructure is not just the people. The infrastructure is the data. The thing is, these parties can get people out, because without even having to get off their couch, they can send an email, click a button, and 50,000 people are knowing about their campaign and what they're up to. Whereas the PPC has to push stuff on Twitter, and you maybe shotgun a bunch of information around the country. Only like 100 people in this riding see that. Only 25 over here, only 50 over there. You need an email list that's like millions of people.
Yeah, and that takes time to build, right? To be like, that takes time to build. But this is what we're talking about. When the PPC become legitimate contenders, when they have that infrastructure, and they can do that because they have a lot of issues. Again, they're running on wedge issues. They have issues that they can go to doors. And a soccer mom who voted Liberal last time could swing to the PPC because she doesn't believe in mandatory vaccines or vaccine passports, or is concerned about this, or like actually does say, like, you know what, we can balance the budget, like inflation's out of control, like Max, we're actually going to stop spending. The PPC has some policies that could win people over, but they just don't have the infrastructure to reach every single Canadian. You know, they can reach the politically active and the Twitter active, and it's like good, like that's a start. But again, not everyone exists in that sphere, and a lot of people don't. And you just talked about Craig Chandler's like being an expert door knocker, like that's how you win. Like you need to do that to win. And listen, it would be like, that's not the fun part. Like if I were to run, I would love to get up there and be like, Bajit Johari, IRGC, Elmer Al Gabra, you know, Minister of Muslim Brotherhood Affairs. What's her face? I you know, just throwing darts and bombs and lobbing grenades. But that could make you Twitter famous, which is all well and good. But in order to win, you're going to need to sort of get out there on the ground and do it. Ground and pound.
Yeah, no, and like I want to spin my wheels too much on this, just sort of talking about the importance of door knocking. But the thing is that the spicy issues, and that's why when Maxime Bernier goes onto people's podcasts like Zuby or whatever, or even someone like Jordan Peterson, you would be way overestimating the amount of people who actually watch their shows, who are going to be in ridings, who are going to be swayed by that. I mean, if anyone knows who this rapper who's sort of like anti-SJW, Zuby is, you're probably already voting for the PPC. So it's sort of a waste of time in a certain sense. I'd still do it just so there's more media out there about you, your name gets thrown around more. But at the end of the day, you need to meet the people who still watch, you know, late night television, who still watch just CTV news. That's sort of the voter you're looking for, who doesn't even know what Twitter is. Like, I think you can probably back me up on this. You'd be shocked at the amount of people who don't know who any of the candidates are running for who are the leaders of their party this election. I bet only about 75% of them wouldn't even know who Justin Trudeau is. And then the other, I bet it's probably down to 20% of people know who they are. And probably for Anime Paul Blanchette and Jagmeet Singh is probably like 10%. People don't care.
Yeah, people don't know, like, how many on the street things you get where it's like, there's a good amount of people who have no idea who Aaron O'Toole is, no idea who Jagmeet Singh is, no idea Yves-François Blanchet or Anime Paul. You know, it's or Maxime Bernier, and they probably know Trudeau's prime minister. But there's a lot of people who just don't know that, and you got to find ways to reach them too. Now, this is the PPC. Like, have they been able to push themselves to the threshold where they can get some money back and start to build a party? Hopefully, but if it continues to be the Maxime Bernier show, like I've said, where it's just Maxime Bernier going across the country doing rallies, and you say, look at all these people at this rallies, and you're like, yeah, those are all ones. Where are the twos? Like that's
the problem is that the people who show up to your rallies, you already had their votes. So you're basically just displaying all the people that you already had the votes of. Whereas it doesn't really take into, and a lot of the people would follow him between different stops. Like they'd follow him to every single rally. So it's like, you're only getting like 50% new people each time, maybe 60. There's sort of a little bit of you're like, a lot of the visual stuff, a lot of the stuff that gets like popular on Twitter when you're putting hashtag purple wave, hashtag vote PPC on Twitter, it looks big because it feels like a level playing field where technically if the NDP wanted to, they could put orange wave on Twitter. Why they could easily do it with the amount of Twitter activists they have, but they don't because they know it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like there's things that, like, again, it's like the Conservatives are actually winning the popular vote here. So the Conservatives are around 34%, the Liberals are around 32.6%. So, you know, it looks like the PPC and it did gain in the vote share percentage. They're at 5.2%. But again, like you got to find ways to translate it. You got to get ridings. You got to meet people, and like this is again, Maxime Bernier sort of struggles with like not having the greatest English skills. You know, he's kind of lost both. Like you're going to need to have some charismatic leader probably carve out a little safe haven in Alberta for the PPC and go forward. And the way to do that is get at the SOCONs. Like Aaron O'Toole tried to kick the SOCONs out of the party. The PPC has to find a way. This is the best thing about the Christians, that this is where the Christians are worth their weight in gold. They have the infrastructure. All right, churches, like I know evangelical is a scary word to half the country, but the evangelicals know how to organize. They know how to do all of this. They've been very politically active. They have some very smart, savvy leaders. They have infrastructure. I mean, the PPC is going to need to really win over the social Christians. That's the sort of fastest way to sort of get some infrastructure. But again, they're gonna need to develop a ground and pound game. They're gonna need a running game. This is it's one of the truth of Canadian politics. And again, it's
and the thing is, it's not even just Maxime Bernier, because we don't want to just highlight him. It's Derek Sloan lost too. Lost the riding, Banff Airdrie that he's running in. The thing is that what I think needs to happen, because the Maverick Party is also a thing. I'm not sure how real the people who run the party are, but the people who were at least candidates and the people who supported them were real. And I think this should, because the thing is, none of the alternative parties were going to win any seats this time. It was very unlikely any of them would win a seat. I think what they need to do now is they need to sort of figure out, okay, do we come together to make a new vehicle? Do we all go to the PPC? Do we all go to Maverick? Do we all go the one Derek Sloan wanted to make, True North? You have to figure out some way of actually marrying social conservatives, libertarians, and all these people together, because every single new alternative party is trying to be too much for one specific type of the alternative vote. And it's way overestimating how many people that appeals to, because of course, if you're a libertarian, you probably hang out with libertarians. 9 out of 10 people are libertarians. So you're like, we can win 90% of the vote easily. When really in reality, you're that's 10% of the vote up to, and then the social conservatives, that's up to 25% of the vote, and the people who are more Western separatists, and I'm talking about unique parts of the vote, those people are another 5% in the West of people who are hardcore separatists. And you have to figure out to make way of making a vehicle where all those people can work together without attacking each other for lacking ideological purity. And ideological purity is essentially why all the parties suck, even the major parties. That in the Liberal Party, if you don't love Justin Trudeau and say how beautiful he is every day, you're going to get kicked out. In Aaron O'Toole, in the Conservatives, Aaron O'Toole even stated, if you disagree with any part of his liberal, light, placid, boring platform, you're going to get kicked out. And that's you need a party where everyone's sort of welcome, and it's not just about one or two people.
Yeah, I mean, let's explain this sentiment a bit, because a lot of people have the sentiment, and this is sort of the flaw of our system. So, Carleen, I've been stunned by the people I've spoken to, how much they dislike Trudeau, yet said they still vote for him. I can't comprehend. They're stupid. So you've actually identified a good amount of the Liberal vote. So the Liberals getting about 32% of the vote. So 32% of people are voting for Trudeau, and a large part of the left-wing vote is, voting against the Conservatives, right? I've just been raised to hate Conservatives, so it's a strategic vote. There's very little Trudeau enthusiasm, okay? The Trudeau enthusiasm vote was 2015. Sunny ways, he's young, he's hot, he's fresh, he's new, sexy, look at that hair, you go, Justin. That was 2015, Justin, and that's sort of his max. The shine's worn off, and a lot of this is sort of the diehard Liberals. This is people voting against the Conservative Party, and the Conservative Party is shooting itself in the foot 8,000 times, unable to be in any way conservative. So, another Drew, the weed vote. Yes, the weed vote too. That actually was a huge part of 2015. Which one of the things is, so some of you might hate this. Again, people telling me I should run for prime minister. If I was running for prime minister, I would run on a platform of legalizing marijuana. And everyone would say it's already legal. And I'd say, no, it isn't. It's this government-controlled mess. How are we losing money selling marijuana? It's so beyond stupid. If it's not that harmful, okay, then it's a commodity. It's just going to be a listed commodity. You're not going to have to get some stupid bribe Doug Ford to get a license or anything. It's stupid. Like a liquor license. You license to grow, license to sell. There you go. We're not having this stupid government marijuana that drives me, crazy, because we're the only people who could get a monopoly on drugs and then not run a profit is the government. It's mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And it's one of the 8,000 things about this country that drives me crazy. Windmills.
Yeah. Also, again, I think what people Again, you'd probably be correct with just saying if someone says, "Oh, hey Daniel, you should run for prime minister," it's just a substitute for saying I agree with your points of view. But again, I think that there's the mentality of that is that I like you, ergo you should run for prime minister, and I think it, to a certain extent, rightfully in a certain sense, goes to people's heads where the parties that they run get too big too fast. These sort of alternative campaigns get too big too fast because they only hear positivity, and you sort of have to earn positivity. I think, if anything, you want to get really harsh. You want to become very critical when starting a new party. Everything has to be done in a very specific way, not in terms of paint by the numbers, be like the major parties, but the way your EDAs are set up have to be done in a certain way. It's like after the 2019 election, the PPC took all of its EDAs in certain areas and they got rid of them, where instead of having Calgary Center, Calgary Signal Hill, Calgary Skyview, and all of them and have each one be different, they would just combine a bunch of their ridings, and then it turned it into a bit of a mess where it's like now one body of people is running like 6 different ridings. So they're basically running 6 ridings very poorly, whereas they should just, even if it's just a tiny little team of 4 people in Calgary Signal Hill, that's the start. That's what you're supposed to do. And if we lose because we had no infrastructure, we'll learn next time and we're going to boost that one up. Where it's when you're trying to sort of like finagle these sort of ridings into larger ones just so you can say you have a board of 20 people, you're really just shooting yourself in the foot because you're making gains that are sort of false in a certain sense. And again, I want the PPC, I want all these parties to succeed, but it has to be done in a very painstaking, leafleting every Saturday, blood, sweat, and tears sort of a way, like raising money, spending it wisely, spending it on nothing that you don't absolutely need, and having a strategy that appeal. And you have to get, as stupid as it is, Aaron O'Toole trying to basically bending over backwards to appeal to the soccer mom and having them absolutely reject him this election because it pandering to people doesn't tend to go after them. You at least have to try and get into. I at least understand Aaron O'Toole because when he says soccer mom, or when people say, "Oh, he's trying to get the soccer mom vote," soccer mom's usually just a way of saying sort of a moderate, female voter who tends to be a voter that jumps to different parties based on the election. And that's true. You do need to sort of figure out how do these people feel? How do they think? How am I going to appeal to them? You don't want to just sort of keep doubling down on your base, whereas the Conservative Party never gives anything to their base. You don't want to become the party where it's just a base party the entire time, in terms of like it's just like you've just started a discotheque for your base, and it's just a party all the time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And we will say, like, there is some wisdom, like when we say like Aaron O'Toole, going to the center, there is wisdom, and you do need to win over the center. So I'm not saying ignore the center. You need to win over the center. But the way you win over the center is you say, I'm over here on the center right. These are my values, and they're the best values. Here's why. Come here to me. That's how you win them over. You don't say, oh, okay, I'm going to run to where you are, and then say, okay, I'm here now, because, the swing voter isn't paying that much attention. Then the liberals just go, that's the alt-right. See? Well, no, the alt-right's over, like, it confuses the message. Then they'll run away from you, right? Like, again, it's human telling. Imagine I'm a sleazy dating coach, right? Just put a fedora on me. Imagine I'm wearing a fedora, everyone, right? You got to make her come to you. You don't want to go to her. And there is some truth to that in terms of romantic relationships, in the sense that, like, you can't be too overeager, right? To go get someone. It doesn't always work. Like, there is some, it's like, show why you are a good person, make the case for you and who you are, do that. And also, like, long-term stability. Like, if you're lying about who you are and you pretend to be, like, more woke than you actually are, well, the relationship's not going to work, right? Be honest from the outset, stand your ground. And, I chose that because we were talking gun lobby earlier, but, that's what we're dealing with. I mean, how much more do we need to do on this? I mean, I'm enjoying it, but, like, it's a liberal minority. Nothing really changed. Maryam Monsef lost. All the other Islamists got in.
Maybe we'll just do a quick little roundabout, and we'll just sort of check where they all are. Because some of these are, again, a lot of these aren't going to be decided until like 17 years later, when we finally count all the mail-in ballots. I'm not saying like, because they got to print mail-in ballots and it's rigged. No, it's just slow and stupid bureaucracy. Like Fredericton, even though Andrea Johnson's ahead of Jenica Atwin, I guarantee more Liberals submit mail-in ballots. So unless Andrea Johnson increases her lead by quite a bit here, I think that she could be beat on mail-in ballots. You never know, though. Kitchener actually seems to go to the Greens, as I just showed a little bit ago there. I want to go quickly. Let's just go check that on Landsman. I know that she's going to be the winner in that area, but I just want to see by how much. It's a very safe, conservative sort of utopia riding in the middle of Toronto. Although if she slips a little bit more, she could lose on mail-ins. Who knows? That could be fun to see. Is there any others we want to see? Let's see Maja Jahari. This one was sort of disappointing because I had access to NDP internal polling that went up all the way to September 18th. And it showed actually the Conservatives leading in this riding. So unless they haven't gotten to the more conservative area of Richmond Hill, I sort of doubt it. And even then, I still doubt it because it's a bit of a tighter riding, which means it's not like they sort of start on the more rural end and then they get to the cities or something like that. And then let's go like up Monsef. Which one is she in?
Peterborough.
Oh, that's nice to see.
Yeah,
that was bad for her.
Yeah, and then there was a fascinating thing of her just not like. I think she probably could have won if she just apologized, said I misspoke, my bad. Like, it's just. Harjit Sajjan is getting back in. Looks like it. Viva Khalistan. It was somewhere in that little area, but.
And I'm a Ladysmith. That one's actually going to be a fight probably for a few days. I saw a poll where 11% of Green voters said they voted by mail, which was like only 8% of, I believe 8% of NDP voters voted by mail, 6% of Liberals, and then 3% of Conservatives. So you could actually see someone, you could actually see it happening where that one takes like literally like 2 weeks to solve with all the recounts.
Oh yeah, it's just going to be Foster Cluck of nonsense on some of these mail-in ballot.
So popular vote wise, at least again, whether you like them or not, overall, like in terms of their policy, you want to see the PPC's numbers grow just for the sheer fact that you want to show that Canadians want an alternative. And this is exactly actually where I pinned them as getting is above about 5 to 6%. Everyone was looking at those Ecos polls and it's like 12%. We're going to get 12%. It's like on the ground walking around is not 12. Sorry. It's just, I've never had someone knock on my door from the PPC, but at very least above 5% means they're going to get reimbursed for their campaign expenses in some of these ridings. And they're going to be given more of an honest look by sort of Canadians going forward. Because I saw it before the election, they were the most looked at party on Google Trends. And although that probably wasn't translating to a lot of votes when people saw them, at least they're seeing them. At least they know they exist.
Yeah, and it's what we said. Like, it's what I said for the last months. The PPC can survive as the People's Party of Canada. It cannot survive as the Maxime Bernier show. And the Maxime Bernier show, yes, someone needs to be going across the country opposing vaccine mandates. I get all of that. But you need to have an actual party. There needs to be a leadership race. There needs to be like a leadership race would do great good for the PPC, not just in terms of like, throwing out, there's no democracy in the party, like all that stuff, but it would generate some internal stuff in the PPC. It's a way to self-vet the party. They would be able to toss out a lot of bad apples, get moving in the right direction, hopefully. That's kind of what they need is they need a leadership review. They need a constitution. They need to have this in there and then build those EDAs and start small because like it's very impressive to get to 5.2%. Yes, they're much better than the Greens nationally, but the Greens, this is why the Greens can win a few seats is because they have a few focused EDAs and really good areas where they can get to 30% because they've spent decades knocking on people's doors and getting out there. And that's why the Green Party can translate 2% of the votes into 2 seats. Yeah.
The thing is too, is that maybe you would disagree with me on this, but it's like, I feel like the protest culture has to sort of be lowered a little bit inside the alternative parties where it has to stop just being about how many protests you can organize and whatnot. Because at some point it just becomes a protest party in a literal sense, that the party just organizes protests all over the place and it turns people off. Because have you ever been in like a situation, and this is outside politics, where someone's like really happy or really outgoing and it makes you uncomfortable because you just can't match their energy in that moment? It's
I
just,
feel like
and of course,
that's a much bigger Wyatt problem.
yeah, this is a much bigger me problem. Someone says good morning to me and I want to like kill myself or something. But it's like, but the thing goes with protests is that unless you're like a 10 out of 10 or an 11 out of 10 mad at Justin Trudeau, you're not going to show up to a protest because you have better things to do in your own mind. Where it's when you see people protesting, it makes you sort of get a little bit tight and you're like, what's with those people? They're doing something that feels odd to me. It's why people, even though environmentalists get more respect because the media sort of pumps them up, there's a lot of people in like the environmentalists, the Green Party, one of the biggest things holding them back is that they're very eccentric. Their candidates are extremely eccentric people. And I think it makes people uncomfortable, despite the fact that they could still win a few ridings. Where what you don't want to do is it becomes like, and I'm not saying this as a derogatory thing, you don't want to become like the anti-vax party, in which you say you got both shots of COVID-19, everyone starts standing back and you're like, whoa, you must be some sort of crazy person to do that. And it's like, you can't make a party based on that. The party can't just be about the people who clap loudest, and those people are the ones who get sort of promoted. It's like those Canada First nutcases, sort of like the actual white nationalists. The PPC, like Maxime Bernier, does not meet with those people, and good thing. But like they are a danger, and you actually have to push them away from being part of EDAs, because despite the fact that the media lies, it's giving the media something to glom onto that's not quite a lie if those people are traveling in the same vehicle as you.
Yeah, that's the thing. People are like, again, PPC took away 5 to 10 seats from the CPC. Still wanted to change the outcome. It's still a liberal minority where the NDP have the balance of power. So like effectively, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Like
I still, and that's the Conservatives' fault. You failed to win those voters.
Yeah, and like it's not me. Like if I said, if Aaron O'Toole had a few conservative platforms, if Aaron O'Toole didn't actively try and cast out these social conservatives from the party, and then kick out Derek Sloan and demote Pierre Poilievre and wage war with me, then they would have these voters. Like the PPC will die if the CPC wakes up and actually runs someone who's like a principled, coherent conservative. Like if you get into the thing and they're saying, we do believe in liberty. We want smaller government. Here's our actual platform and policy. Like, Stephen Harper was great. I'm not afraid of Stephen Harper stuff. Here's, we're going on this. And like, the PPC's support will do it. Now, there'll always be some hardcore people in there. Like Harper signed this agreement and the TPP, and they're all globalists. The PPC's like, there is, is the only one fighting the deep state. Sure. Okay. You can go on that. But a lot of these PPC supporters is like disaffected conservatives. Like, oh, we're not doing anything. Like I'm a principled conservative. I'm in the party for these reasons. Oh, we're not doing any of those reasons. Screw you. I'll vote for them to make you go here. And you can win all of those. You can win over 80% of the PPC next election by being conservative. Yeah. But if you fail to do, if there's another Aaron O'Toole, the PPC is only going to continue to grow and grow and grow as the Conservative Party pushes people. Like it's like tonight is the surprise Pikachu meme was made for Aaron O'Toole. Like Aaron O'Toole pushes conservatives out of his party, and then those people vote for the PPC. Aaron O'Toole surprise Pikachu face. Like that's essentially what's happening here.
I kicked someone out of my home and now they're not inside the house anymore. Yeah, but the thing is also this feels just like a COVID election in the sense that it doesn't. I saw like internal polling from the NDP that showed that Anime Paul in Toronto Centre, who came in second in the by-election earlier in back in 2020, she was polled at getting like 26% of the vote, and they put in a lot of time into trying to win that riding. Like Anime Paul basically didn't even leave Toronto for the first 3 weeks of the campaign. Yet she wins 8% of the vote only. It feels like so much where people were just so whipped by COVID. It doesn't matter what they thought. Everyone at the last second were like, I'm scared of the Liberals getting back in. It doesn't matter what riding I'm in. I'm going to vote whoever. It's like, I'm a Liberal and I'm not going to, or I'm an NDP, or I'm not going to take a chance on the Greens, or I'm a NDP and I'm not going to take a chance on them because like I want the Conservatives might win. It's like, it just feels like a fear election. Even then, like I guarantee also, Bernier would have done better if it wasn't a fear election, because I feel like most people would say, I agree with Bernier, but everyone's been so whipped that, split the vote. Oh, you're going to split the vote.
Well,
I can't believe it, even though you can't split the vote there.
I actually do think Bernier did benefit from this fear election stuff, because he was the only one who ran opposed, because there's a lot of people against the mandates who are now like there's a lot of people who've woken up and been like, oh my God, all this government overreach, and then have kind of got into politics because they're scared, and then gone to the PPC because they're the only ones out there on the ledge on certain issues.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying in specific ridings, they definitely increased the vote overall. I think they activated new voters. In the sense, I think the PPC didn't even steal votes from the Conservatives. I think they literally just brought voters out from outside of politics into it. And the problem is that everyone who's in politics has been so like, they've become so jaded and cynical. They'll just do whatever sort of the party they voted last time tells them to do, because, well, you don't want to let Trudeau in, even though we're like identical at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder in the hypothetical universe we could do it, because I think all reasonable people know that you can't just add the PPC votes to the CPC votes and say, oh, this would have been that. The PPC being out there, did take votes away from all different parties by, being, on the ledge there. And there was a lot of total anti-establishment non-voters that the PPC did win in. So there's a lot of PPC voters that wouldn't have voted, but only voted PPC. The PPC, no, I think the majority of the PPC votes are, you could say taken from the CPC is where they got the majority of ones, but it's not a one to, like, I don't think you can just add PPC plus CPC and get what would have happened if there was no PPC. I don't think that's correct.
Yeah.
And I wonder what the number is. Like, I wonder if is it a 50% transmissibility? Is it 70%? Who knows?
I don't think that. I think it's just that the party, like the Conservatives, I think have gotten so much unlike the PPC. It's like saying that like the NDP is playing spoiler for the Conservatives. It's like they're not even really your people at this point. They're just too far away.
Well, I guess next time they'll come with a fatter, balder, shorter version of Trudeau. There you go.
I think this also shows, because we're sort of coming up to the 2-hour mark, which is sort of where we want to finish, is that like if you want to make a difference, you sort of have to do it along the margins, and it can't be immediately jumping to trying to win the majority government for a new party. It has to be sort of like, like some of the reporting that you do that gets you in trouble that you then have to fight over. I mean, you standing up to like corrupt local government officials in like your small town and whatnot. It sort of has to start at a smaller level, and then you can sort of make your way up to sort of the big leagues over time. And I think people have to sort of cut their teeth on these like more local races. So it's like, if you're in Calgary and you're a PPC person and you're disappointed with the results, go find a really good Conservative candidate that's running in your ward for councillor and help that person win, or up in Edmonton. You actually have to sort of figure out how a campaign works, get the experience, so that when an election happens, maybe you don't have the most volunteers compared to the other parties, but you're doing so much, your people are so much more experienced with collecting data and getting to know voters and being personable.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think there's stuff to be said. I think there's probably a better thing to be said tomorrow, or maybe on my Wednesday show, going through like all the sort of reactions, the reactions and the lessons you see people trying, because I see some Peter MacKay people saying it was a mistake to run to the left. Like, it's fascinating. So there hopefully there's some soul searching on all sides, but the silver lining here is actually no one won tonight. And this is kind of best case scenario. Everyone kind of stayed the same. So the Liberals will declare victory because they can, but ultimately nothing changed. And I think the good thing in this is all parties will have to do some soul searching and hopefully get better. Now, the bad news is they'll do some soul searching and realize they need to be worse. And that's what they'll do. But, you can't have it all. So I'd like to thank everyone so much for being here, spending your time with us and not the mainstream media. We don't get any of that $600 million. So if instead of $600 million, you could just like, share, subscribe, push all the buttons, that's better than $600 million in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. All right, Wyatt. Wyatt
Reluctant,
is
yes.
you're reluctant. Yes, your financial advisor tonight. Thank you ever so much for being here. I'll see you Wednesday night. And Wyatt, you'll be with the narrative on Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, I think I'll be out there on Friday.
Okay, Friday on Shabbat, on the Sabbath. Spend the Sabbath with Wyatt and Richard, and we'll see